for the next heading called as angiosperms. So here the word angio is nothing but closed. Sperms means seeded plants. Here the seeds are covered by the fruit wall. The seeds are covered by the fruit wall, hence they are called as closed seeded plants. The term angiosperm. The term angiosperm is coined by, it is coined by Paul Herman. So it is coined by Paul Herman. So this Paul Herman has coined the word angiosperms, and the father of angiosperms, the father of angiosperms is the father of angiosperm or angiosperms is P. Maheshwari. P. Maheshwari. So here P. Maheshwari Panchanaman Maheshwari is called as the father of angiosperms, and he is also called as the father of Indian embryology. He is also called as the father of Indian embryology. So we step into the other words. So we know that flowers are called as the reproductive parts of the plant body. Flowers are called as reproductive parts of the plant body. And we know that the flowers are offered to the god, and it is given in the affection, or it is a symbol of love. It is given one to the others. So we call flowers are very important. So it is usually in the angiosperms, it is called as the reproductive parts of the plant body. Next. So here seeds are covered. Seeds are covered by the fruit wall. It is covered by the fruit wall, and this fruit wall is called, pericarp. So here the seeds are covered by the presence of a fruit wall, and this fruit wall is usually called as pericarp. Next, the angiosperms occurs in all the habitats. So it is present in the moist soil, dry places, in all the habitats this have been present. Next, the smallest size of the angiosperm. So here we use the word size. The smallest angiosperm is microscopic. Here the smallest angiosperm is microscopic, and this plant is called as Ovule. So this is a microscopic angiosperm, and there are tall trees are also being present, and the tall trees. So some of the examples like eucalyptus. So some of the eucalyptus, they grow to the 100 meters. They grow to the 100 meters height. So we say they are usually smaller to huge, long trees are also being present in angiosperms. Next, angiosperms provide food for us. So the angiosperm plants provides food as well as fodder to the animals. It provides fodder to the animals. It is used as a fluid, used in burning process, and it is also used in medicinal. So here some of the plants are called as medicinal plants, some of the plants are called as ornamental plants. They are more commercial significance are there by the angiosperm products. So angiosperms are divided into two classes. So there is the presence of the classification. In this classification, it is classified into two classes. The first one is called as class dicotyledonous. The class is called as dicotyledonous. So here, the seed in a angiosperm, the seed has the presence of two cotyledons. Here, the seed has the presence of two cotyledons, hence it is called as dicotyledonous. For example, groundnuts. When you take a groundnut seed and press that seed, it gives rise to two halves. Each half is called as cotyledons. So there is a presence of two cotyledons in the seed, hence they are called as dicotyledons. When we go for the root system, so in a dicot, the root is always called as taproot system. Taproot system is present. Here we know that there is a presence of a main root, followed by main root is also called as primary root. This is followed by secondary root and tertiary roots. So there is a presence of taproot system in angiosperms. Now when we go for a leaf character, the leaf in a dicot is always called as dorsiventral leaf. It is called as dorsiventral leaf. And when we go for venation in the leaf, the word venation is nothing but the arrangement of veins and wavelets in a leaf is called as venation. So when we go for venation in a leaf of an angiosperm, here it is always called as reticulate venation. So reticulate venation. So here the veins and wavelets are arranged in a form of a net, hence it is usually called as reticulate venation shall be present. Now when we go for the character of a flower, here the flowers are always tetramerous, or it is also called as, some of this are pentamerous. So tetramerous or pentamerous. So the meaning of pentamerous, there are 5 calyx and 5 corolla, or 5 sepals and 5 petals are there in the florals or floral orals. When we go for a floral orals of a flower called as floral orals, there are 5 calyx. 5 calyx is nothing but sepals and 5 corolla called as petals. So when 5 sepals and 5 petals are there, we use the word pentamerous. When we say 4 sepals and 4 petals, it is called as tetramerous. Like this, it is a dicot has 2 cotyledons with a taproot system, dorsiventrally flattened, reticulate venation with pentamerous structures. So we go for one more class. The second class is called as class Monocotyledae. So in this Monocotyledae, the seed has the presence of only one cotyledon, or we use the word single cotyledon is present in the seed, hence it is called as Monocotyledae or monocot. So there is a presence of single cotyledons, hence it is called as Monocotyledae. Next, when we go for the root system, so here the roots present in a monocot, they are always called as fibrous root system. So here fibrous root system. So here the major word under this fibrous root system is nothing but the radical gives rise to roots. All the roots are similar. It is not differentiated into primary, secondary and tertiary. All the roots appear similar, hence they are called as fibrous root system. So when we go for a leaf, the character of a leaf, here the leaf is called as isobilateral leaf. So isobilateral leaf is called as both the sides of the leaf is more or less similar, hence we use the word isobilateral leaf. So when we go for venations, so venations are nothing but the arrangement of veins and veinlets. So this arrangement of veins and veinlets in a monopod has the presence of parallel venations. There is a presence of parallel venations of being present, hence it is usually monocot. So when we go for the flower character, here always it is called as trimeres. It is called as trimeres. So the meaning of trimeres, here there is a presence of 3 perianth. So here the word perianth, calyx and corolla cannot be differentiated. More or less they look appears like the same one. So we blindly use the word when calyx and corolla cannot be differentiated. We use the word perianth. So in a monopod there is a presence of 3 perianths are being present. Hence we use the word trimeres. So here it has single cotyledon, fibrous root system, isobilateral leaf, parallel venation and trimeres. So we will talk about the sex organs present in the flower of angiosperms. So here just to use a word, the flower, majority of the flowers are bisexual. The word bisexual, both the sexes are present in the same flower. In some of the angiosperms, there is unisexual flowers are also present. The meaning of unisexual, the male sex is different and female sex is different. So in one flower, either male sex is present or female sex is present. Hence we use the word unisexual flowers. So when we take the sex organs, so the male sex organs in a flower, the male sex organs in a flower is usually called as antheridium. So antheridium. So here the antheridium is nothing but a male sex organs, or we use the word the stamen. The stamen has the presence of a very slender stalk-like structure, and this is called as filament. It is called as filament, and above the filament there is a presence of anther. So this anther usually it is connected to a filament. This is called as anther. So the anther is connected to a filament by the presence of connective. So here the stamen has the presence of a filament and the anther. Inside the anther, they are called as PMC, called as pollen mother cells. So this pollen mother cells undergoes meiosis. It undergoes meiosis to produce 4 pollen grains. 4 pollen grains are being present. Or to use the word haploid spores are being present. Haploid pollen grains are being present. Here the word haploid, it has a presence of only one set of chromosomes. So that is usually haploid gametes are being present, or inside this there is a presence of pollen grains are being present. So when we go for the structure of a pollen grain, so the pollen grain has the presence of the outermost. So the outermost layer of a pollen grain is always called as exine. So it is called as exine, and the inner layer of a pollen grain is called as intine. When these pollen grains are matured in the anther, or when the pollen grains are produced in the anther wall is dies, or it opens and throws out the spores, and these spores are carried to the female sex organ in the presence of different agents are being present. The transfer of pollen grain to the stigma of the gynecium is called as pollination. So I am going to repeat this. Here it is the transfer of pollen grain, male gamete pollen grain are transferred to the stigma of the gynoecium, and it is called as pollinations. In this pollinations, again there are different types of pollinations are there. The pollination takes place by wind is called as anemophily. The pollination takes place by the water, they are called as hydrophily. The pollination takes place by the animals, they are called as zoophily. In this, again, there are different types of there. Entomophily, ornithophily, like this, there are different types. We are going to see this in detail. So here, the pollen transfer of pollen grains from male to the female is called as pollination. So this is about the male sex organs. So we go for the next one called as female sex organs. So the female sex organs are called as gynoecium. So the female sex organs called as gynoecium. Here the pistil or carpel, they are called as the unit of gynoecium. The pistil or carpel has the presence of three words. One is called as three parts. One is called as the ovary, and the second one is called as style, and the third one is called as stigma. So here there is a presence of the carpel has the presence of ovary, style and stigma. So this gynoecium, inside the ovary there is a presence of ovules. So here the ovules may be one or many ovules are being present. Depending upon the species of angiosperms, these ovules are going to vary. So here there may be the presence of one to many ovules are present inside the ovary. So here when we go for the structure of the ovary, so here there is a presence of the female reproductive system as ovary, style and stigma. Inside the ovary there is a presence of ovules. So I am going for the structure of ovule. So in the structure of ovule, at the center of the ovule, there is a presence of nucellus. So this nucellus acts as a nourishment or nutrition for the embryo sac. So here the female gametophyte is called as embryo sac. So here nucellus supplies the food for the embryo sac. Inside this embryo sac there are 8 cells are being present. We blindly use the word 8 cell, 7 cell, 8 nucleated. It is called as 7 cell, 8 nucleated embryo sacs are being present. So here there is a presence of the 2 cells are being present, and these 2 cells are called as synergids. The 2 cells present are called as synergids. Below the synergid there is one more cell, and this cell is called as egg cell. So here it is called as 3 cells. In these 3 cells, 2 are called as synergids and 1 cell is called as egg cell. Towards the opposite sides, there is a presence of 3 cells are being present, and all these 3 cells are called as antipodal cells. They are called as antipodal cells. At the center of the embryo sac, there is a presence of 2 cells fused together. The 2 cells fused together, and this is called as polar nuclei. Polar nuclei, or it is also called as secondary nuclei. So here 2 cells are fused, hence we use the word 7 cell, 8 nucleated. Here 2 nucleus is fused, so we call it as 8 nucleated. Next, above the we call covering to the nucellus. Covering to the nucellus, there is a presence of integuments. So here integuments are being present. So this integuments This is called as the integuments. So these integuments are nothing but the covering of the nucellus. This is called integuments. When the integuments are not fused, they open, or we say that there is a presence of small opening, and this opening is always called as micropyle. So it is called as micropyle region, or it is called as micropyle. So here integuments are not fused. When towards the lower side here, the integuments are fused. So it is called as chalaza. It is called as chalaza, or it is called as chalaza region. The stalk of the ovule, is called as funicle. Stalk of the ovule called as funicle. Inside this there is a presence of raphe. So here the stalk is called as funicle and the inner side is called as raphe. So this is called as the structure of pollen grain. Structure of ovule. It is called as the structure of ovule. Now we go for the next heading. So we go for the next heading called as double fertilization. So this is an important character of angiosperms. Majority of the angiosperms undergoes double fertilization. So what is double fertilization? Just we are going to see in detail. So we know that the anther is matured, it throws out the pollen grains. So this pollen grains are called as the male gametes, or we call it as male reproductive structures called as anther produces pollen grains, and these pollen grains are carried towards the female. They are called as pollination. When a pollen grain enters through the micropyle and reaches pollen chamber. So in a micropyle, here the pollen grains are being entered. So in here in a micropyle chamber, the pollen grain starts germinating. So here, as I mentioned here, there is a presence of exine and intine. Exine, intine. So here the pollen grain is divided, or it is split into two cell stages. So one is usually called as the bigger cell called as vegetative cell. The one of the cell is called as vegetative cell and the other cell is called as generative cell. So one of the cell is called as generative cell. So one is called as a vegetative cell and the other one is a generative cell. When they fall on the pollen chamber near the micropyle, from the intine, they produces a tube-like structure. They start germinating to produce a tube-like structure from the intine, and this is called as pollen tube. This is called pollen tube. So this generative cell divides mitotically to produce two male gametes. So here the generative cell nucleus divides mitotically to produce two male gametes. They produces two male gametes are being produced. So this two male gametes from the pollen chamber, here there is a presence of a pollen tube, and this pollen tube enters through the synergids in the presence of a filiform apparatus. There is a presence in the synergids, there is a presence of filiform apparatus. This filiform apparatus guides to reach the egg cell. So here the pollen tube enters to the egg cell. So here, as it reaches to the egg cell, one of the male gamete fuses with the egg cell. So I am repeating that. So in the pollen tube, there are two male gametes are there. One pollen, or we call it as one male gamete. One male gamete fuses with egg cell. To give rise to zygote. This is called fertilization. So the fusion of the male gamete and the female gamete, called as egg or ova, is called as fertilization, or we use the word zygote. Zygote is formed. Fertilization is also called as syngamy. Now, one more male gamete. So one more male gamete passes and fuses with the secondary nucleus. So here, one male gamete fuses with the egg cell to form zygote, fertilization. So one more male gamete. So one more male gamete fuses with polar nuclei, or it is called as secondary nuclei. So pollen, one male gamete and one more fuses with the secondary nucleus, and this leads to the formation of pen. This leads to the formation of primary endosperm nucleus. So it is called as primary endosperm nucleus. So here I am repeating this. So one nucleus fuses with the egg is called as zygote. This is one fertilization. One more male gamete fuses with a pollen grain to form a endosperm. Or it is called as triple fusion. It is also called as triple fusion because already secondary nucleus has two nucleus and one more pollen grain male gamete fuses with this to give rise to three fusions. So it is called as triple fusion. So one zygote here and one more here, hence it is called as double fertilization. Here, two times fertilization takes place. One with the male gamete with the egg cell is one fertilization. One more male gamete with the polar nucleus to form endosperm. Two times fertilization is going to take place. Hence, it is called as double fertilization. After fertilization, it undergoes post-fertilization changes. So here, the zygote undergoes repeated divisions to give rise to embryo. So here, the zygote undergoes repeated divisions to give rise to embryo, and this embryo is further giving rise to a new plant. So this is one of the post-fertilization. Now, when we go for the other words, so we know that there is a dilution has the presence of ovary. So this ovary is always further developed. The ovary or ovaries are further developed into the fruits. So here they are developed into the fruits, whereas the ovules are further developed into the seeds. So this is called as post-fertilization. So one is called as formation of embryo to a new plant, and the other one is called as pen formation, called as endosperm formation, called as when a male gamete fuses with the polar nucleus, that leads to the formation of endosperm. Hence, it is also called as primary endosperm nucleus. So this primary endosperm nucleus is also formed. So this development of an embryo and the development of endosperm, we are going to study this in more detail in the next chapters. So we are going for the next heading called as plant life cycles and alternation of generation. So here we can see both haploid cells are there as well as diploid cells are there. So we try to use the word, there is a presence of haploid cells, diploid cells. These cells are divided by mitosis. So in the presence of mitosis, the haploid cells and diploid cells are being present. So here the haploid cells always gives rise to, the haploid cell always gives rise to haploid plant body. So it is called as haploid plant bodies are being formed. So here the word haploid, it has the presence of single set of chromosomes. Only one type of chromosomes are there. So we use the word haploid and it is represented by the presence of a small letter n. Hence it is called as haploid. When we go for a diploid cell, so this diploid cell is always giving rise to diploid plant body. In some of the plants, the diploid cell is giving rise to a diploid plant body. The word diploid, it is called as two sets of chromosomes. One set is called as male set and the other one is called as a female set. Hence we use the word diploid. So the word diploid is called as two sets of chromosomes are present. Now, here I am going for the fertilization. So here, after fertilization, so the meaning of fertilization, it is a fusion of male and female gametes. So male and female gametes are called as fertilization. Here after fertilization, the zygote undergoes meiosis, haploid. So here after fertilization, the zygote is a diploid. So this diploid zygote undergoes meiosis to produce haploid cells, to produce haploid gametes. Haploid cells are being produced. So this usually the zygote undergoes meiosis to give rise to haploid cell. This further gives rise to haploid plant bodies. It gives rise to haploid plant bodies. So we go for the next heading called as alternation of generations. So the word alternation of generation is nothing but here the gamete producing bodies are called as gametophytes. So we use the word gametophyte. So the gametophytes are usually haploid. So the word gametophyte, it is nothing but where the gametes are formed. So it may be a male gamete or a female gamete. When a gamete is synthesized, that is always called as gametophyte. So this gametophyte is followed with the spore producing structures called as sporophytes. Here normally the sporophyte will be haploid. Majority of the cases it is even diploid sporophytes are also being present. So the gametophyte alters with sporophyte and this gives rise to a new plant is called as alternation of generation. I repeat this, the first one is a gametophyte. For example, when we go for a Markantia, Rixia, called as bryophytes, in this bryophytes the plant body is always called as gametophytes. So the male plant produces male gamete and the female plant produces female gamete and these gametes are fused. So the male gamete is carried in the water and fused with a female gamete and gives rise to zygote. This zygote undergoes to give rise to sporophyte. And this sporophyte is nothing but it has food, cilia, capsule. Inside the capsule, it produces haploid spores. And this gives rise to a new plant. So here the gametophyte alters with a sporophyte, and this sporophyte gives rise to a new plant, is called as alternation of generation. So we start with next heading called as haplontic life cycle. So haplontic life cycle is nothing but here the haploid individuals or haploid plant body is produced. So here the zygote is sporophytic. The zygote is sporophytic generation, and there is no free living sporophytes. No free living sporophytes. So here the zygote represents sporophytic generation, and there is no free living sporophytes. So this zygote undergoes meiosis. This zygote undergoes meiosis to give rise to haploid spores. So they are also called as zygotic meiosis. So they give rise to haploid spores. So this haploid spores is giving rise to gametophyte. So the gametophytes are formed from the haploid spores. So it is called as gametophytes. So this gametophyte is formed from the haploid spores. So this gametophyte usually it is photosynthetic and it is free living gametophytic, and it is photosynthetic. So we are going to repeat this in a cyclic way. So here the zygote called as the sporophyte, this zygote undergoes meiosis to produce spores called as haploid spores. So this haploid spores is giving rise to a free living gametophyte, and this gametophyte produces gametes. So the synthesis of gametes, formation of gametes is called as gametogenesis. Here the male gamete and female gamete is fused together to form fertilization, zygote, or it is called as syngamy. Syngamy is nothing but the fusion of male and female gametes are fused, called as syngamy. So this syngamy results with a zygote, and this zygote is a diploid. So the diploid individual is giving rise to haploid gametophytic, hence it is called as haplontic life cycle. So we go for the second one called as diplontic life cycle. So here in a diplontic life cycle, the diploid sporophyte. So here the starting one is diploid sporophyte. So this diploid sporophyte is dominant photosynthetic independent phase. I'll repeat this. Diploid sporophyte is a dominant one, photosynthetic and independent phase. So this gives rise to gametophytic phase. So this gametophytic phase is formed or represented by one or few cells are being formed to give rise to haploid gametophyte. So they give rise to haploid gametophyte. So haploid gametophytes have been formed. So this can be noticed more in the gymnosperms and angiosperms. Gymnosperms and angiosperms we can see diplontic life cycle. So here I am repeating it. The sporophyte which is a diploid, this sporophyte undergoes meiosis or reductional division to give rise to gametophyte. The word gametophyte which produces gametes, they are called as gametophytes, and this gametophyte produces gametes. Synthesis or formation of gametes is called as gametogenesis. So this haploid gametes are fused. The fusion of similar type of haploid gametes is called as syngamy, results with a zygote, and this zygote again continues with a sporophyte. So here the examples for this is gymnosperms and angiosperms. So we go for the next one called as haplodiplontic life cycle. So here both haplo as well as diplo. So haplodiplontic life cycle. So this can be noticed in bryophytes and pteridophytes. So here bryophytes or pteridophytes is nothing but haplodiplontic life cycle. So when you go for bryophytes, in all the bryophytes there is a presence of dominant, independent. So in all the bryophytes there is a presence of dominant, independent, photosynthetic thallus. Photosynthetic thalloid. Photosynthetic thalloids have been present, which usually has the presence of haploid gametophyte. So this haploid gametophytes produces sporophytes, and this sporophytes usually helps in sporophytes are partially dependent. The sporophytes are partially or sometimes completely dependent and usually gives rise to the photosynthetic or give rise to the gametophytic, which helps in anchorage and nutrition. So this can be noticed in the bryophytes. So when we go for the pteridophytes, so in the pteridophytes there is a presence of diploid sporophyte. So diploid sporophyte, which is dominant, independent, photosynthetic and vascular plants. So here the sporophyte is dominant, independent, photosynthetic and vascular plant. He is present in the pteridophytes, which usually has the presence of multicellular sporophytic, and which is usually short-lived haploid gametophytes have been present. So we start with the sporophyte undergoes meiosis to give rise to gametophyte called as haploid, and the synthesis of gametes called as gametogenesis. Here the male gamete, female gamete is fused to give rise to syngamy, zygote, and this give rise to sporophyte. So this haplodiploid can be noticed in the bryophytes and pteridophytes. So I am going to repeat this. So the first one called as haplodiplontic life cycle can be noticed in the plants. Examples called as algae, thalloids. So here Chlamydomonas, Volvox, Spirogyra, all this indicates haploid life cycle. Whereas diploid life cycles can be noticed in the gymnosperms and angiosperms. Diploid can be noticed in gymnosperms and angiosperms, whereas haplodiploid can be noticed in bryophytes and pteridophytes. So we'll start with the assignments. So here the ncrtc assignments are given in this chapter. So you are going to write this in a separate blue book and submit. So the questions, the first question is, name the amphibians of the plant kingdom, and the second question is, name the different types of systems of classification. Different types of systems of classification. And the third one is, write the different types of phenotypic classification. In phenotypic, there are different types. You are going to write that phenotypic classification. Next, name the first vascular plant. So first vascular plant should be written here. Next, name the naked seeded plants. So naked seeded plants to be written here. Next, name the flowering plants. Name the flowering plants. Next, write a note on classifications of algae, bryophytes, and pteridophytes. All the three algae, bryophytes and pteridophytes classification should be written. Next, write the general characters of gymnosperms. General characters of gymnosperms to be written here. Next, which group of plants are called vascular cryptogams? So, which group of plants are called as vascular cryptogams? Next, mention the difference between monocotyledous and dicotyledous plants. Here you write the differences between monocots and dicots. So, we go for some of the neat questions. So, you are going to solve this and write. So, the first question is, name the pteridophytic plant. Name the pteridophytic plant with highest number of chromosomes. Here the chromosome number which is highest should be represented in the four options. First one is Lycopodium. The second option is Selaginella. The third option is Ophioglossum, and the fourth one is Dryoteres. So, in this, which is right should be written. Second question, name the tallest conifers. So, tallest conifers to be written here. The first possible is Cycas. The second one is called as Siliquia, and the third one is Neetum, and fourth one is Pinus. So, we go for the third question. Name the only living fossil. So, only living fossil present in pteridophytes. So, in this, the first option is Isotes. The second option is Xylotum. The third one is Lepidodendron, and the fourth one is Spinophila. So, we go for the fourth question. Which of the following belongs to Chrysophyta? So, here the first option is diatoms, second option is desmids, both A and B, fourth one is none of the above. So, we go for the last question. The examples for haplontic life cycle among the following. So, here haplontic life cycle among the following. The first one is Volvox, the second one is Lycopodium, the third one is Rixia, and fourth one is Neetum. Students, we are going for overall synapses. So, we know that in this chapter there is a first one is system of classifications. In this, the first one is artificial system of classification by Corvus Linnaeus, and the second one is Bentham and Hooker classification or natural system of classification by Bentham and Hooker, and the third one is phylogenetic system of classification by Engler and Prandtl. Now, we go for the different divisions. The first one is called as algae. So, in this algae, there is a presence of three classes of algae. The first one is called as chlorophyceae, commonly called as green algae. Examples for this is Chlamydomonas, Eulothrix, and Volvox. So, we go for the second class called as Phaeophyceae. So, Phaeophyceae is also called as brown algae. So, examples for brown algae is called as Ectocorpus, Macrocystis are the examples. Now, we go for the third class called as Rhodophyceae, red algae, Bacterospasmum. It is a freshwater algae. The remaining are marine water algae called as Polysiphonia, Porphyra. All these are the examples of Rhodophyceae. So, when we come for the bryophytes. So, bryophytes are also called as non-vascular plants, amphibians of the plant kingdom, or they are called as botanical snakes. So, in this there are two classes of them. One is called as liverworts. So, liverworts is also called as Hepaticopsida. The examples for this is Rixia and Markantia. Rixia and Markantia is the examples. Now, we go for the second class called as mosses. So, these mosses are also called as Bryopsida. So, in this, there is the examples called as Spinalia, Polytrichum, Sphagnum, peat moss. Sphagnum is also called as peat moss. All these are nothing but bryophytes. So when we go for the third one called as pteridophytes. So the pteridophytes are called as lower vascular plants. They are called as cryptogams. So here it has four divisions are there, four classes are there. The first one class called as Silopsida. So in this Silopsida, there is a presence of only living fossil, living plant called as Xylotum. Living plant called as Xylotum. So we go for the second one called as Lycopsida. The example is called as Lycopodium selaginella. So when we go for the third one called as Spinopsida, this is called as Equisitum, called as Horsetails and Hyena. The fourth one is called as Pteropsida, called as Teres and Dryoteles. So we go for the next division called as Gymnosperms, called as naked seeded plants. Seeds are not covered by the fruit wall. So this has three classes. The first class is called as Psychotopsida, example Cycads. They are also called as palm trees. Coniferopsida, called as Pinus and Cypria gigantica, commonly called as giant red tree. So we go for the third one called as Nitopsida, example Nitum. So when we come back to the fourth division or the last division called as Angiosperms, they are called as closed seeded plants. It has two classes, one called as Monocotyledae, example called as maize, paddy. All these are the examples of monopod. Dicotyledae, mango, papaya, all these are examples. And here I have given you about the summaries of all this. Prepare this. In the next video we are going for the meat classes.